What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. Hope you guys are doing well. And it's time for us to return the conversation back to really where the conversation always seems to lead back to, which is the offensive line. We're going to talk a little about the offensive line in this video. First, though, I want to remind everybody that I am going to be doing a show on the Bleacher Report later today at about 6 p.m. So if you don't already have the app, download the app. You don't have to make an account to listen to the stream, but you can make an account if you want to say stuff on stream on the comments. So either way, get the app and get following me over there. I'll post the link in the community tab a little bit later when I have it. So get in there and we'll have some fun talking about this pre-draft process stuff because that is obviously where 90% of our conversations are right now. But this video is going to be the other 10%. I want to talk a little bit about something that isn't draft related that the Seahawks could do to improve their team. I'm talking about trades. And for the most part, the Seahawks have utilized trades this offseason to offload players for draft picks. What if they want to go the other way? What if they want to maybe trade a draft pick to acquire a player? And if they were to do this, there's really only one area of the team that makes any sense to play add-on in that regard. It is the interior offensive line. I don't think you're trading for another defensive lineman. I don't think you're trading for a linebacker. I don't think you're trading for a safety or you're not trading for a quarterback at this point. You're not trading for maybe a receiver, I guess, but at this point, I don't think you're doing that either. We're really talking about the interior offensive line. And at this point, if you want to make a relatively secure and safe improvement to the offensive line, this is the only way left. I keep telling people, and some people don't want to hear it, some people don't want to buy it, but it is the truth, and I'm not going to stop saying it. Betting on rookie offensive linemen to come in and make everything better is a sucker bet. It very rarely works. Offensive linemen come into the league, even great ones, even blue chip ones, and they make a lot of mistakes. Some of them play pretty good, but you're not going to get greatness out of it. And when you take a look at the Seahawks offensive line, that was one of the worst in the league last year, no matter how you slice it. It's pretty unthinkable that a bunch of rookies are going to come in and save you. So right now, the Seattle Seahawks, because they have not really signed any good veteran offensive linemen, have decided to put all their eggs in the basket of Clint Kubiak and John Benton to lift us from what we were last year to somewhere actually good. And I like Kubiak. I like Benton. I'm not saying anything negative about those two. But it still strikes me as an unnecessary bet. Why not improve the players as well? That's why I said many of the things that I said during the free agency period when we had the opportunity to sign some players and it never happened. We spent, I guess we signed Josh Jones, but that only kind of makes the issue a little more exaggerated. We spent more money on Josh Jones than the Browns spent on Tevin Jenkins. What kind of sense does that make? Can anybody justify that? Is that something that anybody can make heads or tails of? I know I can't. Josh Jones is a player that should barely be playing in this league as anything but a sporadic backup, and Tevin Jenkins has played at a very high level as recently as last season in this league. I know he's a flawed player, but how is one guy worth more than the other guy when one guy's clearly that much better? Like, you can't tell me the medicals are so bad that they justify that. But whatever. The point I'm trying to make here is that there's nobody really left to sign that is going to make things much better. So you are looking at rookies to save you. You are looking at coaching to save you, unless you make a trade for an offensive lineman. And that's always a tough proposition. Good offensive linemen are rarely on the trade block because they're valuable. Nevertheless, let's take a look at some options here. Let's take a look at some guys that you might be able to pry away from their current team. Let's take a look at some players that you might be able to acquire in a reasonable trade because the team would save some money and possibly save a lot of future money as well on an extension on offloading the player now. Okay, so let's take a look at some options here. I've got some lined up. Just some guys that I think could be available for the right price. We're going to start with the New York Jets. They've actually got a couple guys I want to look at here. The first guy is John Simpson. They signed him last offseason. He was going to be part of their Super Bowl push with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, the Super Bowl push with Aaron Rodgers didn't even get out of the starting blocks, and that whole thing was a complete disaster. He signed a 2-year deal, so he's in the last year of his deal. And obviously, Aaron Rodgers is gone. The Jets aren't really thinking Super Bowl at the moment. So maybe they want to go ahead and offload him for some draft picks and save some money. So if you look at Spotrac here, you can actually pull up this little pop-up here, and you can see what a trade would entail for the Jets. So right now, his cap hit for 2025 is $6.7 million, and his trade dead cap would be $2.8 million. So that means if the Jets trade him, they actually save most of the money. They save $3.9 million approximately. So that's actually a pretty decent chunk of it. Now, John Simpson is not a super expensive player. I don't know if they're chomping at the bit to dump him, but if they're thinking about this season as kind of a throwaway year, it's not a bad idea. So 2.8 million dead, 3.9 million saved. That's something to at least think about if you can get a draft pick out of it as well, assuming you're accepting that 2025 just isn't going to be that great of a year. And there's another guy on the Jets, actually, that is worth spending a couple minutes on here, Elijah Vera Tucker. Elijah Vera Tucker is a guy that is approaching the end of his rookie deal. He's in the 5th year of his rookie deal. They used the 5th-year option on him last year. I don't know if they regret it now. Obviously, there are problems with Elijah Vera Tucker, but he's a good player. I just wonder if the Jets want to be linking up to him long term, if they want to be looking at AVT and going, this is a guy we want to give monster money to on an extension next season. This is a guy we want to be giving a significant amount of money to this year when we're clearly not really going for it because our last attempt to go for it was a disaster. So this one's definitely worth looking at. This could be an opportunity for the Jets to offload a guy that maybe they don't want to pay long-term money. Now, on a trade, there's actually 0 dead cap. If you trade AVT, you would take 0 dead cap, and the team that trades for him inherits all $15.3 million of that 2025 cap hit. And remember, the Seahawks have plenty of cap space right now. The Seahawks have money. So they have the opportunity to do things like this that on some level may not be the greatest bang for your buck ever. Like, I don't know if AVT is a guy you want to give $15.3 million, but they have the cap space. And I mean, yes, it rolls over if you don't use it, but at the same time, you've already kind of gone part way in with guys like Darnold and Kupp and Lawrence. So maybe you take a risk on a guy like this, knowing that, yeah, it could not work out, but it could also, I mean, he is a very talented player, right? He was a first-round pick. He's been good in the league. So this is a guy that maybe you could acquire for not a lot of draft capital because you're inheriting all that money, by the way. Next up, we're going to go to the Colts here, take a look at Quentin Nelson. Quentin Nelson obviously been a little bit of a mainstay on that offensive line for a while now, but the Colts have not really gone where they wanted to go with this current group. And with him approaching the end of his contract and the Colts not really going anywhere fast, you do wonder if maybe they're looking to move him now and recoup a draft pick and maybe think about the future. With him going to, he's going to turn 30 next season, by the next off season, by the way. So there has to at least be a thought in their head that they would consider moving him to save some money and get a draft pick out of it if they don't feel like now's the time. So if the Colts traded him, you'd be looking at 12.4 million dead, 10.4 million savings. So that is a $22.8 million cap hit. And it's a decent amount saved. It's not amazing, but again, when you're not saving huge money on a trade like that, when you are eating a good amount of dead money, you can also get a better draft pick out of it. Now, I don't know if Quentin Nelson would command massive draft capital, but you would get something out of him, and maybe you feel like that something is worth a little more to you now than having Quentin Nelson on your team for maybe, really, when you look at it, one more year. Because next year's the last year of his deal. It's going to be $18 million freed up if you let him go, And the Colts might really be thinking about that, especially if they're not good in 2025. If they don't have a very good year, they might be looking to just kind of offload these older assets for whatever they can get. So that would be another candidate. Next guy I want to look at here is Zion Johnson, guy on the Chargers, who is on his rookie deal still, but he is coming to the end of it. He's entering the 4th year of his rookie deal. I think that it would be fair to say that he's been a little bit of a disappointment so far in his career. He was a first-round pick. He hasn't really lived up to that. He hasn't been an amazing player in this league. The Chargers did not pick up his 5th-year option to the best of my knowledge, and I don't think they're going to. Obviously, if they do, that would indicate otherwise, but this might be a guy that they're looking to move off of. And if they are now, rather than waiting until next year when he just walks and they get nothing out of it, well, you can save a pretty good amount of money. His cap hit for 2025 is $4.7 million, and if you trade him, you transfer $2.7 million of that to the new team, and there's dead cap of less than $2 million. Now, again, on the whole, this isn't really that expensive of a player, right? You can keep him for the one more year, and it's not like he's a big drag on your cap. But again, are you looking at just letting him walk and losing him for nothing next year? If so, then maybe you would rather just take the pick now. So that's the decision they have to make. They could probably get a pretty decent pick out of him because he is young and relatively cheap. It wouldn't be a big expenditure for the acquiring team. So if you feel like he hasn't gotten to the point where you feel comfortable making him a part of your franchise going forward, like a long-term franchise piece on a team that has already paid a ton of money to their quarterback and is obviously going to be looking to cut costs in other places where they don't feel like they have great star-level play. Remember, they've invested heavily on their offensive line with their tackles, can't necessarily throw a ton of money at a guard. I think moving Zion Johnson should at least cross their mind for a minute here, and depending on what their plan is for the immediate short-term future, maybe it makes some sense. Final guy is another Charger. This is Trey Pipkins. Again, it's the same idea, right? The Chargers paid Herbert a ton of money. They've got a bunch of money they're going to have to pay their tackles soon in all likelihood. They've invested heavily into that spot already. They can't necessarily throw a ton of money at a guard. Now, the difference is that Pipkins is more of a veteran that they actually gave a 3-year deal a couple years ago. So it's not quite the same because it's not like this guy's going to be coming to a monster extension after this season that you have to think about, oh, this guy's going to be a part of this team for the next 5-6 years. If we do this, it's going to be a ton of money. But you're still looking at a situation where the player's cap hit for 2025 is $9.25 million, pretty significant, and the dead cap on moving him as a release would be 2.5. Now it's the same for a trade. It's not like it changes. But the point I'm making is that you could save a decent chunk of that money, invest it somewhere else, or roll it over into next year to cover the cost of an extension to someone else. Obviously, Joe Alt's contract is going to be coming up pretty soon here. You're going to have to start thinking about extending a guy like Slater, and this money is going to help be covered by whatever you roll over. So if you make that trade, you're going to get a decent ass out of it because Pipkins has been fairly good. And he's not super old yet. He is approaching 29, but he's not there yet. He won't be until the season starts. So we're talking about a sensible trade if the Chargers just feel like they're not going to be able to keep him past 2025. And you can trade a player like a Pipkins and still go for it in 2025. He is not an integral part of that franchise that is holding that team up and allowing them to compete for playoff spots. He is just a cog. All right. So that would be, I would say, the start. That would at least be a decent list to look at initially. Let me know what you guys think. By the way, since I know people are going to ask, I did look at the Cleveland Browns. Both of their guards that they had before they signed Jenkins are on contracts that make them virtually unmovable as near as I can tell. So I don't know how that's going to work, but as near as I can tell, they can't really trade those guys. So if you're wondering about Wyatt Teller or Joel Bitonio, unless something happens with those contracts that isn't currently taken into account, it's not happening. So yeah, it's fun to talk about, but I actually don't know what Cleveland's going to do there. Is somebody going to play tackle? Is somebody a backup now? I don't get it. I guess Jenkins is making backup money, so whatever, but kind of weird. Anyway, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think. That would be my list of guards, interior offensive linemen you could at least consider trading for. I want to hear it from you guys. Let me know what you think. See you guys later. Go Hawks.